Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Taylor.
Here.
Jay.
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
Bob.
Here.
Brandy. Here. Kurt.
Excused?
Mark.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 6 of us present today. It's now time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, that brings us to item 3 on today's agenda, and that's approval of minutes. And those are the minutes from one meeting, and that was from July 18th, 2019. I'd entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So move.
Second.
A motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Stanton Gregor. I don't see any changes being proposed, so all those in favor of accepting them as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is amendment and approval of today's meeting agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented today.
So move.
Second.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Borough to leave the agenda as it's been proposed for today's meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, we will move forward then with the meeting as presented. Okay, there are 2 public hearings today. First public hearing is for ordinance 2019-05. This is an ordinance authorizing long-term indebtedness in the amount not to exceed $8 million for the design and construction of water and wastewater infrastructure in the borough, and directing that this matter be submitted to the voters for consideration at the next regular election to be held October 1st, 2019. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to participate in this public hearing? Now is the time to step forward and say anything if you'd like to. Okay, seeing none, that brings us to the second public hearing today, and that's a public hearing on ordinance 2019-09. And this is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2020 budget for known changes. And that's a sewer line on Casino Street. We need a little bit more money for that. Is there anybody that would like to participate in this public hearing? Seeing none, it brings us to the next item on the agenda. Both public hearings are closed. Bid awards, item 6, there are none today. Item 7, this is persons to be heard with related ideas to the agenda today. Is there anyone that would like to speak to items on today's agenda? Okay, please step to the microphone, state your name and who you represent. And if you could please keep it to 5 minutes, that would be great.
Okay. My name is Alice Williams. I represent myself. This is regarding the Parks and Rec age limits and facility closures. I am opposed to increasing the age requirement for facility use to 11 years old or 6th grade. Implementing this change will likely have a negative impact on facility use and livelihood for children that use the facility. I agree with many others who have submitted letters. A lot of improvements can be made to make the facility safer for our kids without setting the recommended age restriction. Let's focus on those. Our children need a place to go where they can be active, play with friends, and practice some independence. I don't want to see that taken away from them. On closures, I'm happy to see or to hear the facility will be reopening on Mondays, but was disappointed when I saw it will remain closed on Sundays. I have a personal interest here as I currently am involved with a program, the Roller Derby League, that has used Sundays, used the facility on Sundays for several years. But my other concern here is there won't be a place for our community to use on Sundays to stay active, especially as seasons change and when the weather is not great for outdoor activities. During the school year especially, I feel it's imperative the gym and pool are open on weekends. There are often birthday parties held on Sundays, and I've seen a lot of kids and families using the facility together on Sundays, which is great. So in addition to reopening on Mondays, I ask that you please also reopen the facility on Sundays. This facility has a lot to offer our community, and our community has people that commit time and energy to organize programs, fitness classes, and activities that bring people in and promote a healthy lifestyle, which I am so thankful for. This is what we should be focusing on. Let's work to keep the facility open, take measures to increase safety for our kids without setting the suggested age limit, and support programs and activities. I appreciate your time and consideration of these requests. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in the audience that has comments that are related to items on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move. There was a couple letters that people submitted. Member Bucci, were you going to read?
I was going to read one, Mr. Mayor. I was going to read one.
Okay,
At
well, that
such
would,
time.
I don't see anyone else in the audience that wants to participate, so maybe now would be an appropriate time.
Sure. I didn't know if you
It's
wanted.
related to today's agenda.
Yes.
Right? Okay, perfect.
I have a letter I was asked to read from Nicole Olson. Dear Mr. Mayor and Assembly members, I'm writing to you again today to voice my concerns over the proposed age changes to the community center. I attended a meeting on Friday, August 2nd, where community members were invited to be a part of a discussion for a new proposed age restriction at the community center. It was brought to our attention that the main cause of concerns is that younger children in the facility without an adult accompanying them may be the victim of some sort of harassment or abuse. There is plenty of data and research out there that says that most child abuse victims will be abused in their homes by someone they know, not in a public facility by a stranger. There was also concern voiced over the potential lawsuit against the borough if something like this were to happen. Mr. Giesberg was asked about the lawyer creating a waiver to release the liability of the borough and the Parks and Recreation Department, and he said that he was still waiting to hear back from the lawyer on that. I have a few points that were brought up at the meeting that I would like the Assembly to be aware of as you consider taking action on this against this matter. The proposed change will not make my 7-year-old son any safer in the locker room. If I am the adult who is accompanying my son to open swim, he will still be in the locker room without me, for no more or no less time than if he were to go to open swim by himself. It was asked of the community center staff and director if they knew what kind of monetary impact this would have on the center to eliminate an entire user group, and they did not know the answer. I would expect the figure would be significant. I was able to attend open swim twice with my children this summer during the afternoon open swim time, and I would say the majority of the children there were under the age of 12 without an adult. When I did attend those open swims, there were very few children there who were over the age of 12. From my viewpoint, most of the kids seem to lose interest in open swim by the time they reach that age. It is detrimental to the health and the well-being of our children anytime we take away a physical activity source. There are children in this town who use the community center as an escape from difficult home life situations. Where do these children go if the community center is no longer available to them? There are several suggestions brought up at the meeting in an expansive way to make our facility safer. Number one, implement a simple video monitoring system. I understand that cameras are already in place and budget has been adjusted to account for extra expense for installing fiber optic cable. I understand the monitoring screens will be moved to be more easily viewed by staff. Install a simple intercom system in the locker room so that if someone is in danger, trouble, they can call out. Number three, the staff needs to do a better job of regularly monitoring the locker rooms. There should be a locker room checks done at a minimum of every 30 minutes. Number four, the staff needs to do a better job of securing access points. It was brought up that the doors have been left unlocked and unauthorized individuals have gained access to the facility. It doesn't cost anything to lock the door. Number five, the director needs to move her office to a more prominent location to have more presence in the facility. Number six, it was suggested that staff wear uniforms so they would be easier to be identified. If the borough feels the need to implement a strict age, then make the age 7. Students in this age are first grade and have been a solid year of appropriate community center behavior through the school's swimming program. They've had stranger danger type education in school, and it is already the allowable age to attend open swim. Thank you for your time and consideration, Nicole Olson. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to talk to items on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, that moves us to the next item on today's agenda, item 8, persons to be heard with issues unrelated to today's agenda. So please come forward, state your name and who you represent.
Good morning. My name is David Whitethorn. I'm a business owner in the community. I have great concerns what I'm reading in our newspaper about these turboats coming here and dropping their gray water and their sewage in our harbors. I've seen it before. I haven't personally seen it, but I've seen videos of it from several different incidents, and I don't like it at all. I think this committee should come up with an ordinance that states if they dump their gray water in our harbors, they can leave, not come back. They're dumping it in where we eat clams. They're dumping it where we eat our crab. Our fishing industry can't survive this, and that's what's floating this community. So I'd take a hard look at what's getting dumped in our harbors. So I thank you for your time, and I hope it stops. So.
Okay, thank you for your comments, and I'm going to touch on that topic a little bit under the mayor's report today, so, and maybe we'll take some further action. Come forward, state your name and who you represent, please.
Mark Martinson, I represent myself. I'd like to reiterate what David just said. Over the last few years, I've been chief engineer on a 170-foot cruise boat and a charter boat a year ago, and the amount of sewage, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, it's appalling what goes into the harbor, right in the harbor and outside. I mean, the septic systems in these boats are beautiful systems when they work, but they hardly ever work. And I've witnessed mass amounts of just raw sewage in the harbor and outside the Narrows. So it's been an ongoing thing for years. So anyway, I personally witnessed this. Thanks.
Yep, thank you for your testimony. Excuse me. Is there anyone else in the audience today with topics not on today's agenda, items unrelated to items on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to board, commission, and committee reports. There are none today. So that moves us to the consent agenda. There are 2 items on today's consent agenda. The first item is Island Ventures LLC lease agreement. The second one is a retail marijuana store renewal application, the 420 store. I'd entertain a motion to approve these items on the consent agenda together, unless someone wants to review them. Okay. Second. Motion's been made by Member Stanton Gregor, seconded by Member Morrell. Any discussion?
Sure.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, have we heard from anybody, representative from Island Ventures LLC?
What do you mean heard from them?
Well, have we had any comments about the rates going up?
No. This was an agreement when, so he leased the land prior to the ramp being built. Mm-hmm. He estimated the size of the ramp. Yep. We billed him upon that with the agreement that there would be an as-built survey done once the ramp was finished, and then we would adjust the rate, and that's exactly what's happened here.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if there's no other comments, will the clerk call the roll?
Jeff?
Yes.
Jay? Yes. Taylor?
Yes.
Kurt? Oops, sorry. Mark?
Yes.
Bob? Yes. Brandy? Yes. Thank you.
Okay, the 2 items on the consent agenda passed unanimously. That brings us to report of other officers. There's only 2 reporting today. Excuse me, myself and the manager, and I'll go first. Very short report. First of all, I wanted to talk about the cruise ship wastewater discharge. There was an incident that happened recently in our harbors by a vessel called the Safari Quest. There was a letter in the paper, I believe not this week's, but last week's or recently. I kind of lose track of time. I've been on the water fishing quite a bit, but it was an apology for the accidental discharge in our harbor. And from what actually took place from the harbor master's logbook, and it wasn't accidental. They were approached by the person on duty from the harbor staff the day it happened, and they said they were permitted to dump their sewage anywhere they wanted, basically. So after that, a few people from the Coast Guard came and did a interview with the harbor staff, and they're looking into it. So I just thought the public should know that there's more than one side of the story, in my opinion, and I don't think it was an accidental discharge. They apologized, but they could have worded it a little differently, in my opinion. And most recently, there was a video taken by the staff at the port facility of the American Constellation pumping what appeared to be sewage. I don't think anybody took any samples, but they were, again, if I got my information correct, that they were asked to quit discharging in the harbor, and they said they had permits to do so. So, like a few people testified a few minutes ago, I think it's something we need to look into. I don't know what the regulations are. I know they vary for sizes of ships and number of passengers, but I don't think it's a good idea for treated, or especially untreated sewage to be dumped in our harbors. So in the future, we should have some kind of discussion, possibly even contact our lobbyist in Juneau, and maybe he could look into the regulations. And I think our harbor master's been involved in this. She talked with the Coast Guard personnel that came to town a little over a week ago. So the next item on the mayor's report is Southeast Conference annual meeting, and it says I may be traveling, I will be traveling to Sitka for the Southeast Conference the 18th, from the 18th to the 20th. That was in the budget for this year, so the travel plans have been made. Next item on the agenda, municipal election. The last date to file to be a candidate for the October 1st, 2019 municipal election is Tuesday, August 20th, 2019. There are 17 elected positions seeking interested candidates. For more information, contact the Borough Clerk's office at 772-5405 or drop by the office here on Main Street. Encourage everybody to participate. It's nice to have a lot of people involved in this process we have available to us for making decisions for the public, and encourage everybody to register and to vote if you haven't already. And one other thing we need to talk about is who will be available for the next meeting, which is next Thursday, since this one was delayed, at 6 p.m., just to see if we think we have a quorum. So anybody that won't be here, let's start with that. That's at 6. I could make it. I might just be tying my boat up, but I'll make it.
Okay.
And we can't ask Mr. Walhooter, and I believe Thursdays are not good for members.
I can do the evening one.
The evening one? Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I can call in.
Okay, we still
can
need
call
4 to quorum. So,
Yep.
Brandy, will you be here? So that's two of us. Bob, will you be here? Well, that will make 4.
Yep.
We should have a quorum,
Okay, sounds
and
good.
we'll build from that.
Thank you.
Okay, so that ends the mayor's report. It's now time for the manager's report.
Can I have, Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
ask a question here?
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about the cruise ship wastewater discharge. Would it be possible to get staff to kind of get together with DEC and find out what the parameters are for dumping gray water into the ocean?
Do what they're allowed to do are listed. They actually all have permits. And those, like the one that the first one the mayor was referencing was small enough that it just falls under the Coast Guard qualifications. The second one he was talking about is a larger vessel, and it actually falls under EPA and has a on file. You can go look it up. We can all go look it up, and they are each specific to the vessel. And so, yeah, it's interesting reading.
And, Mr. Mayor, yeah, and so the other part is, I mean, I think, and we talked about it, I think at the last meeting or something, about sending a letter to the cruise ship industry, or at least getting together with the cruise ship industry and making sure they understand that it's not appreciated to dump gray water in our borough. I mean, I know they have a permit to do that, but I don't think it doesn't do anything for us trying to accommodate some of the cruise ships that come to town when they're dumping their gray water, which they have a permit to, in either the harbor or in Frederick Sound, where we're always recreating or getting food. I mean, I was just in the harbor on Tuesday, and that's all I could think about is, oh, this is great. There's stuff in there, and I think we need to kind of sort it out with them and let them know that it's not acceptable here. I don't know.
I guess that's kind of where I was going with that too, member Mucci, is to get some kind of a borough position on this issue. And I from a couple of the instances I'm talking about, I feel they're unacceptable. So, Member Lynn?
Thank you. Under the EPA regulations, do we have the authority as a borough,
as a public entity to establish additional regulations in our borough.
You know, I had an interesting conversation with a fellow who is working with the cruise ship industry in BC. And they he felt, we just had a conversation, because I know him from Harbor Board meetings, and he said BC is far ahead of us when it comes to, maybe you would call them gentlemen's agreements, those kind of things, within their, within their areas on how they handle discharge of waste and gray water. Currently, what he's working on with them is how to deal with a mass casualty, or if there's a big crisis, one of those boats goes aground or something like that. And so he said, Southeast Alaska especially is far ahead of BC on what to do if there's a crisis, because our captain of our port has addressed it considerably, and we're getting extra ships here because of that. But we're far behind BC. So I talked to the mayor about this a little bit, and it would be really interesting I asked this fellow, this guy, that as he's going forth, maybe he'd share some information with us on kind of what they're doing in other places, especially in other countries, because I too feel that we're getting a lot of interest in Alaska because of the low regulations compared to elsewhere. And so he said he'd do it. And just to remind the assembly that the group that you brought together last year under the visitor group, that visitor group, we have been looking at this, and we have a fellow that used to work for EPA on that board. And, the governor taking off the Ocean Ranger was a real slap in the face, most of us feel. And so I think the state's going to be really talking about this at a level. But yeah, I agree with all of you. It would sure be nice to have a set of regulations for me to be able to try and enforce something. Because we go down to the side of the ship, and first of all, we got to catch them in the act. And then we don't know really the first thing about taking samples. I mean, who's to say, that we're doing it right and we can, actually do something with this? And then they have the law on their side. So, it's really, it would be nice for us to explore that, and I would appreciate that coming from the borough, just taking a stance, nothing else.
Follow-up question.
yes.
Will the group that's working, our tourism group, will they have a recommendation on this from the group?
So, yeah, I believe we will. I think that group is broken up into different subcommittees exploring, and there is Ron Bushman is, I believe, kind of heading that up, and he's very active and actually bringing in a lot of outside information. And Liz is great too. She's been gathering information, and everything I get, I forward to that. Another comment I have is Juneau is just came out with they actually just gave P&D a contract to address the small cruise ship industry that is increasing even in Juneau, and how they as a community are going to deal with everything from moorage to some of these other questions, because the bigger ships are pretty clear cut on what they can do and what they can't. And so I asked Dick Somerville, to maybe if he would be able to share us some information on his findings as well, and he said he would. So I think we're not the only one here, and I think that, just if you please continue to apply the pressure, maybe we can change, some of these just standards that maybe aren't as, and that aren't publicly recognized as good things.
Oh, I have one question for the harbor master. Was this video that was shared with you from Petro Marine, was that forwarded on to anybody, Coast Guard or anybody?
We didn't. I got it after the fact. I didn't have any samples. They would have been under the EPA standard, and looking at their license. Without a sample, you're not going to really be able to prove you
Much.
know, much, because anyway, no, I did not pass it on to EPA.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had that question. Mr. Berg, you want to make a comment? I wish you would have come during the agenda for report of other.
Appreciate the ability to speak to this. I heard it on the radio and came up right away. Thank you. I speak today, David Berg. I'm the owner of Viking Travel, but I speak to you as an individual today here in town about this subject that you're speaking about with the cruise industry. I was present at the Safari Quest shortly after the incident that happened in the harbor, and I really believe that it was an accident, that they had a tank overflow that they weren't aware of, and it had an overflow alarm on it that purged some of the material into the harbor, and I truly believe that they were sorry that happened, and it was an embarrassment to them. I'm certainly in favor of the community coming forth with some regulations regarding discharge of anything in our harbors. I don't like to see it. I know our residents don't, and I think that the ships, if there were fines, regulations, backed up by fines, that they would acknowledge that and make provisions to do their dumping elsewhere where it's permitted. The ships are working with the borough under considerable expense to pump black water off here into our sewer system, rather than discharging under their own permits in state waters. The National Geographic regularly pumps off of each of their vessels that come in here, each of their larger vessels, the National Geographic Venture and the National Geographic Quest. So that is currently happening at their expense, and we're happy to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, manager report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Amy Poe, our summer intern at the library, is about halfway through her project focused on improving the user experience at the library. Please share your thoughts about using the library with her so we make it the best for the entire community. There's a survey at the library's website at psglib.org, and she can be reached at intern@petersburgak.gov. The intern program is funded by the Alaska State Library. The library did receive a $7,000 grant from the Institute for Museum and Library Services in partnership with the Petersburg Indian Association, and a $7,000 grant from the Alaska State Library. Funds will be used to purchase materials for the collection. Summer Stream, which is the library's summer program for youth, ended July 18th. The John Ness Memorial Super Reader Prize winners were Peyton Dreisbach and Miranda Carr. Thanks to Jeanette Ness and Stuart Ness for sponsoring this annual prize. Also, thank you to John McCabe, who has made a $10,000 contribution to the library's Arts Endowment, Education Endowment. He established the fund in 2012 as an ongoing funding source to enhance arts programming at the library. The fund is held and managed by the Alaska Community Foundation. Petersburg Indian Association will not be offering sidewalk snow removal assistance during the 2019 and 20 winter season. Just want to thank them for all the help they've given us in past years, and hope that maybe that can come back again in some future years. But in the meantime, sidewalk snow removal is a question mark for us. The streets crew completed a resurfacing project on the landfill Hall Road, which included clearing brush away along the route. Also, they're finished replacing some failed curb and sidewalk near the school grounds. Sandy completed and submitted the final LEPC grant report. This program was deleted by the governor, so she did finish up the final paperwork. Wanted to give congratulations to Martin Odegaard, who was promoted to the Streets Department Foreman, and to Aaron Merle, who has been promoted to Heavy Equipment Operator. Jeffrey Gillen was hired to fill the vacant utility worker position and started this week in Public Works. We are finalizing a schedule for the Emergency Trauma Technician course, which will start in September. Encourage folks in town, if they're interested, to talk to Sandy. Water plant is averaging about 1.5 to 1.7 million gallons of daily production this summer with no issues. Just as a reminder to folks, we don't have a concern about our drinking water supply. It's more on the hydro side that we have concerns. Horizon Associates will be providing a proposal to design piping changes at our water storage tank. Exploratory digging showed us that the solution to EDEC's request for better separation between incoming water and outgoing water from the tank will be more difficult than we had hoped. Hauling water to numerous residents beyond the distribution center continues with the drought. Water staff delivered over 30 loads of water in the month of July. My guess is it'll be similar in August. Power and Light is working with private property owners to obtain permission to remove large trees next to our power lines. D&D Tree Services has been great to work with, and their expertise is greatly appreciated when bringing down trees that are within inches of our 24.9 kV lines. Power Light's annual FERC inspection of the Crystal Lake Dam, penstock, and hydro was held on July 10th, and the inspector had no issues for the department to follow up on. A very clean inspection of the facilities. Thanks to Power and Light staff for keeping the dam, penstock, and hydro in great condition. Recreation basketball is coming up in September. We are currently seeking volunteers to help with coaching all age groups. If you're interested, please contact Stephanie at 907-772-3392 or spayne@petersburgate.gov. We did have an air leak in the dry sprinkler system on the gymnasium side. Ketchikan Mechanical was delayed in coming to town due to the ferry strike, and staff is working on bringing John Taylor to town to fix this issue as well as perform our annual maintenance checks on the entirety of the borough sprinkler systems. The filter on the leisure pool is scheduled to be fixed this week from August 16th through the 19th. We'll be closing the pools on this Saturday to replace the media, the broken manifolds, strainers, and lateral drains. We'll also be installing new chemical controllers to increase efficiency of the use of chlorine, and these items were all planned and budgeted. So that's it, unless there's questions.
All right, any questions of the manager? Member Mucci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, on the library report about the grant, do you know if that money can be used for personnel?
Generally not. I'd defer to Tara, so I'd have to get back to you.
Okay.
But generally, most of those are very specific on the library side to program, whether it's art purchases or book purchases or media in general, but I can find out.
And so do we have a plan to do sidewalks in the winter when it snows out? What are we thinking there?
Not yet. Traditionally, we have not had to do that, so it's an add-on. So right now we don't. We reduced the Public Works staff by one and moved that person over to building maintenance. So we're not exactly sure how to swing this quite yet. But we'll keep working on it.
Member Mucci, you have another?
Yeah, a couple more. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so the consultant, the Fox Group, who is doing working on the recommendations for Mount View Manor, so those will come before us, and you'll be looking for some direction from us to kind of...
Yes, sir. The Fox Group report came out, glowing recommendations, or glowing report on the facility. Nothing easy from a standpoint of, wow, you could save a bunch of money here. That's a good and bad thing to hear. It's a good thing meaning, hey, it's managed very well. Bad thing in the sense that there's not necessarily explanations or ways to make that place break even. The consultant did throw out an opportunity, which would be to add a long-term memory care component. We're a little leery. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. Those are expensive services, so you can make a lot of money. The problem is it takes a lot of staff, and the manor is an area that we have a high turnover in, and it's really difficult to hire people. So adding what would amount to about 12 extra people up there, we're just not sure we could swing it. I mean, we are going to look at it. I mean, try to get more information about what it would take to do that. It would also be displacing other apartments that are used for other purposes right now, and we don't want to do that to individuals. So anyway, I mean, great information from the perspective of the facilities run well. Don't have a next step quite yet. So.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions of the manager? I have one question for you, Steve, about the power and light and the tree clearing services. I noticed you talked in the report about the high voltage lines. Excuse me. I noticed they were clearing some trees on Wrangell Avenue. Does power and light picking up the tab for that then?
Some of them we are, yeah.
Okay.
You know, one of the challenges we've got there are trees, and Carl can jump in here. And we have trees that are right under or adjacent to our lines. Some of them are ours, so in other words, the property's ours, so those are on us. But others are on private property, and we have been offering, hey, if you give us permission, we'll take this tree out. The reason we do that is because clearly planting it and having a tree disappear is a whole lot better than it happening in the middle of the night, and then we have a much bigger, more expensive proposition. So it's kind of a combination of both based on where the tree's located. Carl, I don't know if you want to.
I was just kind of curious. If I had a wood stove, I would have been over there asking for the trees, but I don't anymore. So that brings us to unfinished business, and the first item under that is an ordinance for second reading, and this is ordinance 2019-05, and that's an ordinance authorizing long-term indebtedness in the amount not to exceed $8 million for the design, $8 million for the design and construction of water and wastewater infrastructure in the borough, and directing that this matter be submitted to the voters for consideration at the next regular election to be held October 1st, 2019. I'd entertain a motion to approve this ordinance in its second reading.
So moved.
Motion been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Lynn. So discussion. And just a clarification to the public, this is not, it has to go to the voters for one. That's the reason we're doing this. But even if it does pass the voters, it's not like we're going to spend the $8 million. There's numerous projects for each division, wastewater and water, and they'll have to come back before the borough if we get the loans for approval, and then the bid awards when that gets that far. So just for people listening. Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Taylor?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes. Okay, ordinance 2019-5 passes in its second reading unanimously with a 6-0 vote. And that brings us to the next ordinance, and that's 2019-06. This is an ordinance adjusting the fiscal year 2020 budget for known changes. Entertain a motion to approve this in its second reading.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Lynn. Discussion. Seeing none, clerk, call the roll.
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, it passes unanimously. And next item under new business is, or the first item under new business, I should say, is an ordinance 2019-07 is the number, and this is an ordinance amending section 3.08.150 of the Petersburg Borough Code to outline a procedure for addressing an assembly by written comment at a public meeting. I'd entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance in its first reading.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Member Mucci, seconded by Member Lynn. Any discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I've got a little bit of a problem with this proposal. To me, and the second sentence on there, if the person wishes to have the comments read into the record at the public meeting, but is not in attendance at the meeting, he or she may request that an assembly member or another member of the public who will be in attendance at the meeting do so. I think there's an equity question here and a reasonableness question. I would propose that we remove the assembly member, and if the letter comes in, it's already part of the record. If they want to have a member of the public or one of their friends read it publicly, I think that's great. But to have one of us read it, that creates a situation where, well, he read it, but she didn't, or he did. I think that we need to remove that, the section on, and I would make a motion to remove the section, request that an assembly member read it.
Okay, so that is in form of a motion to amend then?
That is in a form of a motion to
I'm
amend.
looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Member Lynn, seconded by Member Morrell to remove, if I heard it right, the assembly member
Right.
out of the wording. Okay, Brandy?
Can we add the borough clerk, just in case there's, oftentimes there's no one in here, so, just to have somebody that's not,
Well, I had a conversation with Debbie about that earlier. I hate not trying to speak for her, but it's very uncommon that the borough clerk does read things into the record, but they're already part of the record there, when they're on the agenda. So, Member Stan Gregor, sorry.
No, you're all good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I like the general idea of, like not having the clerk read things into the record because that is not a common practice. I like the wording about if a member of the public wants to have a family member, that sounds great. I'm wrestling with Member Lynn's amendment because, like Member Mucci reading that into the record today for a member of the public, it's kind of like saying, you're almost having somebody sponsor your letter, like saying it's that important and adding weight to it. I feel very comfortable saying no if somebody asks me and I don't agree with it. I'm just wrestling with your thoughts on that. I have no problem with that either. I'm just trying to decide which way to go. That's all.
Any other discussion?
But
And what line, can you identify the line and what section here, Member Lynn?
it's next to the very last line, and I'd like to remove the words request that an assembly member, or.
Okay. Just so we're all clear on what we're voting to remove. Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah, just a comment is that I thought, I've read a lot of letters related to Parks and Recs this last couple of weeks, and I thought there were some excellent letters there, and to read one, and I'm glad that they asked you to do it, but to read one and not read the rest, I don't think's quite fair, in my opinion. Because there were some excellent letters in there, and there was excellent commonality that I thought in there that need to be followed up on.
So that brings a question to my mind. All those letters that were submitted to us, including Nicole Olson's that was read at the meeting today, are those on the website, or people could go read them?
Yes, they are.
So they're all available. They're all
published in the
public
packet.
comment.
And-
Yes.
And may I make a comment?
Yes.
Another reason that the clerk is not added into this amendment on the ordinance is that I do my best. I try really hard to read other people's comments with the inflection that I believe they mean them in. But it's difficult because if you don't believe in something, you may read it a different way than they would. And I think that it's important to have someone that does believe in whatever those comments are being shared, read it for them. I think it's just, like I said, I try, but, I don't want to upset someone by reading something differently than how they meant it.
Got it. Okay. Member Stan Gregor?
Yeah, just wanted to thank the clerk and Member Lynn for clarifying. I'll be voting for this amendment.
Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I understand what Member Lynn is asking or requesting is that the assembly can't read a letter from the community? Is that the intent?
That's probably why, if you want to take it to the long end, I can think of other situations where letters should be read, but in this situation we're talking about, yeah, I think you're right. We had, I think I read 20-some different letters that people have written to us. And we didn't sit here and read all the other ones here. Why do we, and I understand why the individual asked you to read one, but the other people have in my mind, have just as much equity and just as much concern. So do we read all 21? We either go one way or the other, in my mind.
Member Mucci and then Member Morrell.
Yeah, you go ahead, Randy. I've talked to Mr. Twice.
I guess I was just thinking, sometimes we get letters and they don't necessarily are requesting that it be read in public, but sometimes they do, and they're unable to make it for various reasons, might be out of town. So I would like them to have an opportunity for it to be read. I understand it not being read by an assembly member. I just would like it to be, I don't know who else would do it. And I understand That's not, I just think that somebody should read it if they request it and are unable to make it for whatever reason.
Although it is part of the public record, just being published in the packet as well.
Member Mucci?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, we might have read 22 letters and stuff, but I only had one request to read the letter. I only had one. If I would have had 10 or 15 requests to read letter, I probably would have said, no, it's just, you know, it's a matter of public record, but it's not like we had a lot of requests to read it. And I think if a member of the public asks an assembly member to do something at the assembly level, we should be halfway responsive to that. We shouldn't hide behind an ordinance that says that, oh no, we can't do that. We should be able to accommodate what is requested of us if it's not unreasonable. So I'm going to be voting no on the amendment.
And I'm going to vote for the amendment, and the reason is that I think the person that has the letter and wants it read publicly, if they can't attend the meeting and read it themselves, they could find someone that is along this, you know, supports their position to do it. So that's all I have to say. Any other comments before we vote on the amendment? And this is to remove the he or she may request that an assembly member or another member of the, well, just the assembly member to read it in the meeting. That's what we're voting on. Clerk, call a roll.
Brandy?
No.
Mark?
This is, if you vote yes, it's to remove, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Bob?
Yes.
Jeff?
No?
Jay?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes. Okay, so that amendment passes, and we'll go back to the main motion as amended. Is there any other discussion on the main motion as amended? And just for a reminder, this could always be put back in if there's enough input from the public to do so. A next meeting, which is next Thursday at 6 p.m., will be the public hearing on this ordinance.
Correct.
So clerk, call the roll, please.
Brandy?
Yes.
Jeff?
No?
Bob?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, the ordinance passes in its first reading. Next item under new business is cost proposal for inspection of the Petro Marine building for the borough may be acquiring. And I asked for this, for the borough to research the building condition for mold. We had an inspection done recently, but it was just they tested for particulates, I believe. And one of the areas in the building registered kind of high, so my concern is that the building was unheated for years, and the roof had a known leak, and I would feel bad if we move forward without this test, because mold can be very hazardous to your health. So that's what I asked for. So I guess we need a motion to approve this expenditure, and it's for $3,180.
So move.
Is there, motion's been made by member Lynn, seconded by member Morrell to move forward to authorize the manager to move forward with this. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, call the roll.
Jeff?
No?
Bob?
Yes.
Brandy?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yeah.
Mark?
Yes.
Jay?
Yes.
Okay, this moves forward with a 5-1 vote, so the manager can move forward on that. Next item under new business is C, Water, Wastewater, and Sanitation Department Rate Studies Proposal. And this is from Utility Director Hagerman and Public Works Director Cotta are recommending award of a contract for rate studies for the Water and Wastewater and Sanitation Departments to FCS Group, who performed rate studies for these same departments in 2012. This would be in an amount not to exceed $39,695. I'd entertain a motion to approve this expenditure.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by member Mucci, seconded by member Lynn. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll. Oh, member Lynn.
I have a
Sorry.
couple questions for Carl. You're recommending, I'm rooting here trying to find your letter, you're recommending the first part of it, but in the very last page, there were what I'll call add-ons. Is your thinking at the time that we will not need those add-ons that would bring that almost double that cost, or whereabouts are you at?
Service analysis for the water, sewer, and sanitation, which seeks to allocate all of the expenses of the utilities to each customer class. We've done that in the past in the water and sewer. We know that there's a very lopsided allocation to residential customers over commercial customers in that. And the council in the past has supported that, not wanted to change that. Essentially, it gives the processors a break for what they're doing in town and the water that they use. And so I didn't think it was worth spending the money to just uncover that again. And the second one was rate design. I think the rate structure that we have right now works. It just may need to be adjusted. So I didn't really see the need to spend money on a rate design at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Carl or discussions? If none, clerk call the roll.
Mark,
Yes?
Taylor,
Yes.
Brandy,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Okay, we will move forward with the rate studies. That will help since we're potentially going to be looking at doing some maintenance work on those systems. Brings us to communications and response to the Assembly's letter to Cake regarding the proposed Cake to Petersburg Road. I received an email from Rudy Bean and a phone call from another gentleman in Cake, Mr. Davis, the mayor, and I returned his call, didn't get an answer, but Mr. Bean wants to meet and discuss this issue at Southeast Conference. I'm assuming it'll just be a discussion between the three of us, and then I will ask, we ask them to give us something in writing, so I'll mention it'd be nice to maybe have something back from the Cake that states their position on this road. I believe that's what we were after in the beginning, so just a update on where that is. Any questions or ideas for?
Not exactly a formal answer at this point, then.
Not really, and maybe, and I will discuss it with him, but I will ask him to send a formal answer, otherwise it could, like third hand, fourth hand, that goes.
Yep.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 17, Assembly discussion items and Parks and Recreation. Assembly Member Morrell requested this agenda item, and there's a memo to Manager Giesbrecht from Borough Attorney Heidemann regarding the recommendation to raise the minimum age to enter the community center without a parent or guardian. An email from Parks and Recreation Director Thornburg and emails from community members are attached as well. So this is where all the letters are on the record. And this whole discussion. So, Member Morrell, would you like to speak to this? Or?
Yeah, well, obviously this has got a lot of community's attention with the age thing, but I think that there's been issues within that department prior to this, and we'd asked the manager to assess things, and this just kind of brought it to a head. So I think that we've been asked by many people to get involved, and I think it's time to have a discussion at an assembly level.
Okay, so that would have to be in the form of some kind of a ordinance or resolution or something if we're going to, and I don't know what you're looking for exactly. You're looking for some kind of restructuring of Parks and Rec or reinstalling the Parks Board? Or
it was more of just where we think the direction of the department needs to be going, because it's not going in the right, or the direction, or it wasn't until everybody, that the community is looking for. We've closed down 2 days, and now they're bringing one back, but that we didn't budget for that. We had a full budget for 7 days. They want to change the age, and it's obviously an issue. And until there was a lot of community members and people asked for a meeting, that was just going to be kind of pushed through. And so I think that, obviously we need to tell the manager what we expect, because it was not happening until a whole group full of people got together to basically say this isn't gonna work, or we don't like this, and we're members, we're paying for it. This is a borough-run facility. That's where I'm at.
Okay, Member Stanton Gregor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just for, I guess, a point of clarification for Member Merle. So about the direction we want, didn't like the direction you thought it was going. So what did you propose as far as where we should go with it?
Well, I think that there was a lot of great ideas that came out of the meeting. I think that those need to be looked at, which it sounds like they finally were, but prior to a community member asking for a meeting, it kind of was disregarded from what I've seen. I don't think that the age limit needs to be changed from what it currently is. I think that we need to figure out ways to implement things that, like I said, there was many really good suggestions. And before we start making changes, and I think that we need to figure out how to get it back to 7 days a week, which is in our budget, which we passed. And that's just kind of what I was thinking.
Okay.
Any other, and this has prompted discussion, that's for sure, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, the way the discussion starts sometimes get people's blood pressure up, for lack of a better term, but the discussion with the manager, it sounds like the school and Parks and Rec are looking at camera systems for monitoring, which will probably help, and so we'll see how it goes from here. If I understand it right, we're not going to change the age limit at this time, correct? And I'm sorry I didn't read your email, Chandra. Yeah.
At this time, the age limit discussion has been put on hold until after this assembly meeting to see where the wishes of the assembly wishes to go.
Okay. Just so the listening public knows. So any other discussion? Member Mucci.
Well, I don't think you should be looking for the assembly to tell you about the age restrictions. I mean, for me, I think this, and I've told the Parks and Rec director and Steve and staff that I think the whole thing's been handled very poorly from the start. Very poorly from the start. When I get, and we get, all these letters from the communities and phone calls, something is haywire, and it needs to get fixed. I think we have an opportunity here to kind of, when I was up talking to Chandra the other day, that it wasn't even being enforced that when you came into the community center that you had to swipe your key card or your pass card in there. So there was really no way to monitor who was coming out of the facility. That needs to change. It looks like from the email I got last night that some of those things are changing. A lot of the things that the community members had brought forward, they're being addressed, and I think Parks and Recreation staff has to address all the letters that came in and look at all the comments that people had to say and look into making things better up there. I mean, we've all been hearing about the cleanliness of the gym or the locker rooms for many months here, and I've been involved with a couple of things with active shooters, and it's just one of those things where just walking up into the gym, into the community pool the other day, the back door is unopened. So if we're worried about security, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has been brought forward that we can make that facility run better. And I think we have an opportunity with all these 22 or so letters to see if people are interested in serving on a working group with Chandra and Stephanie and trying to identify some of these things and see what works and what doesn't. I mean, I know if I go home and I tell my wife that we're going to do this, that doesn't really work well. I mean, you got to have community buy-in. If you don't have community buy-in, then the community's not, they're going to fight you tooth and nail. And you see that in some of the very passionate letters that we have. I'm expecting the city manager to work with the department head to kind of make this thing better. I'm expecting them to kind of go through all the letters that we got and identify the common themes in there and sort it out. I mean, I think there's a little bit of responsibility with the Viking Swim Club, the Parks and Recreation, and a little bit with the school. I mean, there's some things that are going on up at the facility that some people just don't know what's happening. If the Parks and Recreation closes their facility at 9 o'clock at night and it's all cleaned up and they go home, then sometimes the school gets to come in there and use the Parks and Recreation facility, and it gets dirty. And then when the patrons come in the next morning, the patrons are upset. So we need to kind of sort that out. I think the school superintendent is working to try and tighten things up there so that it's not that easy access back and forth between the communities, between the schools and the Parks and Recreation. And I think there's some people who have written letters and who are very passionate about this that can help solve these issues. So yeah, I'm hoping that it gets worked out, and I would hope to have a report back from the city manager through Chandra in a month or two to see how things are going. Because the community is going to want to know what's happening. Thank you.
Member Norham?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, I noticed there was a lot of things in this, many emails, that were actually addressed in the meeting. They just were not allowed to get to that point because, as the newspaper said, it all kind of fell apart when it got to that very first part. So there's valid concerns here, and turns out they were actually already being addressed. But instead of listening to the entire presentation, they just kind of took over the meeting and didn't want to hear it. And that's what the newspaper said. So, and that's what I was told from the Parks and Rec staff. So I would guess that maybe next time people should stop for a second and get all the information that's trying to be presented to them.
So maybe some kind of, I don't know if we need to go with a working group, but that's an idea to figure things out. But we'll just have to see how the operation at Parks and Rec moves forward, I guess, and see if the community's satisfied with the facility. Any other discussion? Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But, we have a group, the Friends of Parks and Recreation, that deals a little bit with some issues dealing with Parks and Recreation. But, the director can reach out to community members and try and pull a group together. That can happen. But if these changes happen and the community doesn't think that their concerns have been addressed, they're not going to be happy about it. There are several people on this list who would have some really positive impacts in responding to some of the ideas that have been presented by the Parks and Recreation staff. And I don't think we need to I don't think we need to kind of, we'll just see how it goes. I think we need to kind of give Steve some strong direction that we want this issue dealt with. Like Brandy said, or Member Morrell said, that there were 2 departments that we wanted the city manager to look at because we had some concerns about it. And Parks and Recreation was one of them. And I think as his evaluation proceeds, and we're going to be looking to see how things have changed at the Parks and Recreation, if the community is not happy, we're not going to be happy, and I'm sure you'll hear about it.
Okay, any other member, Stan Gregor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question for Chandra. So, I met with you and Stephanie the other day, and thanks for doing that, and kind of filled me in on a lot of the process that you guys have been going through. So from the letters and the meetings you've had, do you feel like you have enough information, enough suggestions to kind of compile and vet these things and kind of take your time and plow through them at this point? Do you feel like you have been given enough suggestions or feedback from the public at this point to analyze all of it, I guess? If that makes any sense, sorry.
We've received a lot of feedback, a lot of which there's a lot of great comments and ways to move forward. We're definitely taking them seriously and looking into them. Each day we come in and review more of the comments and try to address or work toward what the community has talked about. Some of these underlying issues have been around since the opening of the facility, just by the way the facility was built. One comment and suggestion that we got was retrofit the facility to make it safer, and so that the front desk staff is meeting the people at the doors that they enter instead of having to chase them down the hallway. Changing spaces and opening up an old office space that was closed off when the aquatic center was built was a great suggestion that was put forward, and we're looking into that one. There's been multiple conversations, but some of these changes have to occur with the current user groups that are in the facility right now.
Sure.
So the way that we were trying to approach this issue was to develop a clear and concise understanding with the school district first, because they're the major user group of our facility. Next, we approached Viking Swim Club because they utilize the pool space from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. We were hoping to work with the Viking Swim Club to figure out some of the solutions, as they not only have pool space, but they're also using the entire office that's down the hallway right now and other places in the facility. So we're going to continue to move forward addressing the concerns of the public. And if anybody has any more comments or concerns or would like to be included on an email list that I'm updating from the group that attended the meeting on August 2nd, please email me at cthornburg@petersburgak.gov, or come on into the facility, and Steph and I would be happy to meet with you.
Thanks, Jen, for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Any other discussion? Member Lynn?
Yeah, I spent about an hour with Chandra and Stephanie the other day, going through, and I read the letters and reread them and talked with a number of the parents. I think there is some really valid concerns here, and going back to, we asked that we reevaluate or we look at Parks and Rec in total. And after spending the time with Chandra the other day, there are quite a number of moving parts here. Some need to be fixed now, but in terms of looking at this over the year, I think we really need to kind of an outline of what we're going to look at and how we're going to go about it. We have safety concerns up there. We have reinvestment or new investments that probably need to be made there. We have our operations. We have past policies that really are in place but have not followed through. There's a lot of moving parts is what I'm trying to say that probably need to be reevaluated. And over the year, I think those all need to be taken on. But I think there needs to be kind of what I'll call a plan of attack to do that. And that's what I've not seen. And that may be what other folks are talking about.
Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it's great that the director is reaching out to the major users of the facilities. I think that's great, but I think it's really important to understand who's paying to keep those places open. I mean, without involving the taxpayers, or at least involving the people who have put their names on a piece of paper stating their concerns, and I think it's never going to work if you don't include some of these people in your decision-making process. It's never going to work. You're going to get people who are never going to be happy, but if you bring them in the tent, everybody will be more satisfied than just, mandating from the top. You need to get the buy-in from the community here, or it's just not going to be successful up there.
Does the assembly...
Manager Giesbrecht, do you have a comment?
Yeah. A prior assembly eliminated the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Is the assembly asking for that to be reinstated? That was the group and the means for this.
That's something that any assembly member could have put on an agenda, I guess. So I remember during Borough formation, that's when we decided which boards and committees we were going to keep intact. And Parks and Rec was one that was voted to not keep. And the specific reasons why, I'm not sure.
I do, actually.
Yeah.
One of the reasons some of those boards were clipped were lack of participation, and the Parks and Rec Board was one of them. Never being able to have a quorum and not being able to even have full seats. I believe it was Member Hogue at the time put this issue forward to eliminate some of those boards. We couldn't keep people on. If you're using that as a regulatory means and you can't get a quorum for 6 months, it becomes useless. So anyway, that's the backstory on why that one went away.
I remember, there's always a lack of participation, so. Any other discussion on this? It sounds like it'll be an issue we will be keeping in tune with, and it sounds like Parks and Rec directors working in the direction of the public comments, and hopefully we can make the users satisfied with the operation. Member Mucci?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to Steve's question about the Parks and Recreation Board, we already have a Friends of the Parks and Recreation group that meets more regularly in the fall and winter than they do in the spring and summer. I mean, I think that would be a great opportunity to charge those folks with working with Chandra as well as members of the public. I mean, you already got something in place. I mean, when we have an issue on a stop sign or a speed limit, you know, the chief deals with stuff, but we have a sounding board with the Public Safety Advisory Board that, you know, gives staff an opportunity to bounce stuff off. If staff steps out on the edge of that plank with crappy ideas and they look around and nobody's behind them, they're going to get canned. So they have to have the support of the community to push changes through. If they don't have any support, it's never, ever going to work. And I think you have the opportunity with that public, or the Friends of the Parks and Rec, to kind of ask them to help out a little bit.
I defer to Chandra and Stephanie on how successful that board has been.
So for 2 years ago, like 2 years ago, I started running ads in KFSK through the assembly, requesting the community to come together so that I can have community feedback about the direction and place and future of where they want Parks and Recreation to go. For 8 months, no one stepped forward. I went out to multiple different people in the community requesting them to come to these meetings. After 8 months, I was able to get a group of people together who then spent the next 6 months figuring out and researching if they wanted to become a board, if they wanted to become a nonprofit group. And they decided, after talking with the Alaska Community Foundation and researching the reasons why the previous board was disbanded, that they would be a group of friends that got together to help with projects as volunteers in the community. I gave them the full list of projects that we're currently working on at Parks and Recreation, and we sat and we had a brainstorming effort to try and identify what was most important to them. The 3 projects that they're currently working on are establishing a route of a potential golf course, Frisbee golf course at City Creek Trail. This is all on paper. No monies have been spent. Once this is completed, once this packet is completed, they would like to present it to the assembly and to the community to see what they think. The second project that they're working on is updating Eagles Roost Stairs, also helping clear away and figuring out if we can get any grants to replace that stair system. And then the third project is making more the showers and the pool locker rooms more water efficient for an on-off button. So these 3 projects are the projects that are taking priority for this group right now. I have talked to this group about the upcoming changes. We started discussions with them 8 months ago, let them know about different things. They're choosing to focus on the projects. This group is ran as a separate entity from myself. I am not their leader. I'm communicating with them. So I just wanted to give you that update of how that has moved forward.
Member Mucci.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. So are there membership requirements for Parks, Friends of Parks and Recreation?
Mm-mm.
And so just to follow up, how can you reach out to these? I mean, I'm just looking at the 15. Can you reach out to these 15 people and see if they'd be interested in being on that group?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because then you'd have a group the current group that's not really interested in dealing with the day-to-day operations of the Parks and Recreation, the Aquatic Center, and the gym. But you've got 15 people at least here who have expressed interest in seeing something done differently up at, and I would bet, I know for a fact you could get 3 or 4 people out of this group that would come up there and help.
Yeah, I most definitely can. The last email that I sent out to this group requested our next in-person meeting on Monday, October 7th at 5 p.m. at the community center.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, brings us to recognitions. Is there any recognitions? Member Stanton Gregor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is for the general voting public. It is that time of year where it smells like democracy because elections are coming up, and the filing date, last date to file for any elected seat is this Tuesday, correct, Clerk Thompson?
Correct.
5 p.m.?
That's correct.
Which means you still have time to grab filing packet to gather signatures to either run for assembly or any of the many boards here in town. And we need good folks for all of them so that as everyone listening, we encounter lots of different issues at the assembly level, and we need people who want to be invested in our community. So please run for an office. Thanks.
Member Lynn?
Yes, I just have an announcement here is that the Medical Center's Master Plan Design Team will be holding a public forum to introduce the team, to share their preliminary findings, and discuss the next steps towards visualizing, looking at our healthcare in our community. There is a public meeting here in the Assembly Chamber Monday night at 6 p.m., August 19th. So anybody that's interested and want to talk about healthcare, want to see what the long-term thoughts are, certainly welcome to attend.
Okay, sounds good. Any other recognitions? Any staff have any recognitions or? No? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.